Good.
He's good. He's, I won't. He's smooth. He's stronger than most. I'm telling you right now.
Kind of. He calls me. He says I bully him when we play basketball because I push him all over. I mean, I make him work.
Hey, Kurt. Hello, Lisa. On
I look really good. I know.
when we're doing the bench and the curls on there with him,
Yeah.
he's smooth.
Good.
He's smooth.
I'm glad that you're doing it. I think they'll. I think it'll do them a lot of good.
I was reluctant. Cole Jackson thinking they're going to jump, but I'm gonna tell you right now, they're gonna get and maybe because I'll show him technique now that I tell him it's not the weight and all that is technique, repetition, technique. He concentrates on the technique. He's doing well.
Steven, can you see me?
I hear you. You hear us?
Okay, yes.
How you doing? Couldn't be any better. I'm gonna tell you right now, I need to go back to work. Sally's killing me. She's killing me.
I feel you. I understand.
I've dumped more in the last 2 weeks cleaning out a building than I have in the last 10 years. I spent 5 hours putting up a fence today that I'm telling you,
Afternoons, I feel like I work a day garden.
and when I get done, she says, "Well, tomorrow we can." And I said, "I ain't seen too much of this we stuff."
We the big word.
French mouse in your pocket, sweet.
Yes.
My friend had a sign that says, "A retired husband is like a piano in the kitchen, useless and in the way."
I guess she's making sure I'm out of the way. I'm telling you right now.
I'm not used to all of this. Okay, everybody should be able to hear Tracy when she talks on here. Remember last time it was kind of garbled. I've got the Chromebook running with cable all the way into the sound system this time, so you should be able to hear these speakers clearly. Right, Tracy?
Yes, sir.
Heard her well. Last time we didn't miss anything though.
I
Just
heard
kidding.
that.
Just kidding.
I have no problem hearing you.
I think you got the mic. He's got holes in it because you must have.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Hey, Lisa.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
All right, moving.
Hey, Sarah, is your microphone on?
It says it is, but
It doesn't say, it says on mine that it's not on.
You can have mine.
There you go, Justin's is on. There you go, Sarah.
hello? Is that working? Can y'all hear me?
You want?
I'm not going to try to figure.
Hello.
That's better. I got one. Kurt gave me his.
Can you hear me in this one?
One. Kurt, need one. Okay, I'm going to start this welcome while y'all are doing that. I want to welcome everyone to the Henderson County Board of Education special meeting tonight. Today is April 1st, 2020, and it is 5:30. First thing we need to do is approve the minutes from the prior meeting. Has everyone had a chance to read those, and are there any additions or changes?
I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. West. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to approval of the architect engineering services for South Heights HVAC action. Ms. Morgana.
I'd like to recommend to the board that they approve the architectural and engineering services for South Heights and award that to RBS.
Okay. Questions of Ms. Morgana or discussions about that item? Hearing none, I look for a motion to approve the engineering and architect services for HVAC South Heights to RBS. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion. We accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Tracy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the approval of the special inspection services for the new Jefferson Elementary School project.
In our board packet from the last meeting, all 4 of the businesses that submitted a bid were listed in your board packet, and
Right.
we approved those.
Right.
And tonight I would request that you approve L.E. Gregg and Associates to be the company that conducts special inspections for Jefferson Elementary School. It is the lowest bid of the 4, and John Codell has culled through the 4 packets that were submitted to make sure that it was a good and valid proposal for our inspections.
Okay, and do that. Okay, any questions of that, board members? Hearing none, I look for a motion to approve the special inspection services as listed by Ms. Morgana Stanley.
I'll make a motion. We accept the superintendent's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mike. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, Kurt. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All in favor say no. Motion approved. Moving on to the introductions. And we've got roles.
Lisa, this is Ken. Can you hear me?
I sure can. There you are.
Usually I meet with you a few minutes before the board meeting to kind of go over this, but usually what we do is allow each member of the committee just to introduce themselves. I'll start out if it's okay. I'm Quinn Sutton. I work part-time with Kentucky School Board Association. I'm a retired educator after 29 years. I spent the last 9 years of my career as a superintendent and line in McCracken County. So I'll be working with the board and with the screening committee through this process. I look forward to it. A lot of things have changed since we met on February the 13th. I never dreamed that we'd be sitting and meeting through Google Meet. But anyway, we'll make the best of the situation, and we will work through this process just like it's meant to work. So look forward to working with each one of you.
It's going to be fine, Quinn. You just go right on ahead, and we'll follow your lead. It looks like you got a great group of people right there in front of you. I think I approve of all of them.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Tracy Williams, retired elementary school teacher and current school board member.
I'll go. I'm Jamie Like. This is my 19th year with Henderson County Schools, and I've always had a mental health, social worker kind of background with the school system.
I'll go next. I'm Sarah Fleming, and I am the proud principal at Clarksville Elementary.
My name is Stacy Fish, and I am the digital learning coach for middle schools for Henderson County. I'm a former middle school math teacher.
My name is Cassie Cone. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I'm a kindergarten teacher at Ben Gates.
My name is Justin Scott, and I work at Lighthouse Council as manager.
Hi, I'm Matt Glick. I'm the PTO treasurer at Jefferson Elementary.
I think that's all of them. Go on back to you, Quinn.
All right. Thank you, Miss Lisa. Glad to meet everybody. If you look on the agenda, we will go through that. The first thing I would like for you to look at in your packet, you should have a sheet of paper that says Henderson County Search Statistical Information. Just want to share, this is all public knowledge, what I'm fixing to share with you. There were 14 people that were interested in the position of superintendent. Of those 14, 12 have a completed application. Of those, 10 are men, 2 are women. We have 4 sitting superintendent candidates, 4 that are in the central office, 3 that are principals, 1 that is retired. Of the 12, 8 are in-state and 4 are out of state. As far as the numbers go, I was a little disappointed in the numbers. I'm working with 2 other districts. Their numbers were 19 applicants and 20 applicants. I really feel like the timing of this was not ideal for Henderson with the coronavirus starting. I think some people probably put looking for jobs to the side a little bit. But anyway, I think with the 12 applicants, I've looked at them. There's some quality applicants in there. So all it takes is the one is the right fit for the Henderson County Board of Education, and that's what we're looking for. But right now, we'll be looking at 12 applicants. Any questions about that?
No.
No.
Can everybody hear me okay? I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we just go down through the agenda. The next sheet of paper in your packet should be titled Selecting a Superintendent, Board and Screening Committee Roles. I'm not going to read that entire document to you, but I do want to hit a few highlights. That first paragraph says KRS 160.352 requires that a screening committee be appointed. That is this group of individuals. So that has been done. It does say the screening committee shall be composed of 2 teachers, 1 board member, 1 principal, 1 parent, and 1 classified. And that cannot be deviated against unless there is a 8% minority in the district, and there was not a minority member elected in the first 6, and that was the case. So we added a minority parent. So there's a total of 7 members on this screening committee. The next paragraph says, prior to appointing a superintendent, the board must consider the recommendations of the screening committee, but the board is not bound by them. So in the end, the screening committee does a lot of work, does a lot of preparation for the board. They make recommendations for the board to consider X number of applicants. But at the end, it says, the next paragraph, it is the responsibility for hiring a superintendent rests with the Board of Education. So after this whole process is finished, it is the board's decision. So if you go to the bottom of the page and it talks about board responsibilities, you look at number 1, it says establishes a screening committee by providing timely notice to the people we talked about earlier. Number 3, establishes a timeline for all phases of the search process. When I met with the board on February the 13th, we established a timeline. We're going to have to talk about that timeline here in just a few moments because that timeline has been changed due to the postponement of this meeting. This meeting was supposed to happen on March the 23rd. So we'll talk about the timeline here in a minute, how we're going to adjust that. Number 4, develop criteria for the superintendent and instruct the screening committee regarding the same. At the first meeting in February, the board established criteria. Miss Lisa will share those criteria with you here in just a few minutes. The board has advertised the position through Kentucky School Board Association. The board also allowed those applications to come through Kentucky School Board Association. We have received all of those. Tonight, when we go into the executive session, I will share with you a password to the link that will allow you to look at all 12 applications. Number 7, they are to provide the screening committee with the application materials. Just what I said, I will share that information with you tonight. On the back, number 8, the board will charge the committee regarding the responsibility of confidentiality. Ms. Lisa will read a statement in a little bit that will give you your charge. Number 9, they will establish a date for the screening committee to report back to the board. That date was originally April the 22nd. Again, we're going to have to look at the date and see if we need to adjust that. Most likely we will. Number 10, receive and give consideration to the report of the screening committee. The board is not required to hire from the recommendations of the screening committee. However, it is to be assumed that the screening committee was responsible and did its work well. Therefore, the committee's recommendation should receive serious consideration. Number 11, the board will interview candidates as the board sees fit. And number 12, it is the board's responsibility to hire the superintendent and establish the conditions of his or her contract. The responsibilities of the screening committee: you're to screen all the candidates according to the criteria established by the board. Number 3, adhere to the board's directives regarding the security of applicant file and confidentiality of applicant information. We will stress confidentiality all the way through this. So I'll share more about that with you later. Number 4, you're to report the recommendations to the board on a date and a manner described by the board. So that's the screening committee and the board's responsibilities through this process. If you look at the next sheet of paper in your packet, it talks about the screening committee process. So again, I met with the board on February the 13th, which was what we call the planning meeting, where the board chose how they were going to advertise, the criteria that they wanted in a superintendent, the timeline. Again, I go back to the timeline. We're going to have to adjust that. And during that time, the screening committee was being put together. So tonight is what we call our first meeting with the screening committee. The things that are going to take place tonight, you're going to receive all the applications electronically. Tonight, we're going to also look at the questions that we're going to develop, the questions that references are going to be asked. We're going to develop the questions that the applicant is going to be asked. And we're going to look at the initial screening process and what that looks like. So that's tonight. Then when we meet back for our second meeting, we will have narrowed the candidate pool down from 12 to, we'll talk about that in our meeting, probably 6 or 7. And we'll consider the candidates that need to be checked for references. And I will assign those candidates to the committee to call the references and to call the candidates themselves and ask them and interview each of those. Then on our third meeting, we come back as a screening committee and we narrow the list of candidates to X number. The board is asking between 2 and 6. So we will narrow down the candidates that the screening committee is going to recommend to the board. And then the last meeting is a joint meeting with the screening committee and the board, and the screening committee gives those recommendations to the board. And at that point in time, the screening committee's has completed their job, and it is up to the board to start the interview process and hire who they think is the best candidate for the district. So after tonight, there will be 2 more meetings that just the screening committee meet. And then the third meeting will be a joint meeting between, just like tonight, between the board and the screening committee, where the screening committee makes their recommendations. Any questions about the process?
Nope.
No.
Okay. So, Ms. Lisa, I'm going to give it back to you. A couple of things. The last 2 sheets of paper in that packet, the last sheet is the original timeline. And the one next to the last is the screening committee's, the charge to the screening committee. So after we establish what the timeline is, I would ask you, Ms. Lisa, as board chair, to read the charge, all of that page where it says Henderson County Board of Education charge to the screening committee. I will ask you to read that entire page, realizing that the date on number 2 and number 5 was the original date, and that will probably be changed. So as we talk about the timeline. So I'm going to give it back to you, Ms. Lisa, to discuss the timeline and what the board wants to, how they want to amend that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. We can move forward on this. So the first date that we were to meet was March the 23rd, and we are 7-8 days behind on that to get that moving. The second one was the screening committee meeting to go through the applicants and do the background checks and all of that. So I want to ask Mr. Quinn, how much time do you want now between today and that second committee meeting? How much time do you think we're going to need? And board members, do you all have an opinion on this? Mr.
I
Mike?
do.
Okay, go ahead. No.
Tonight being the first, I guess, formal meeting of the screening committee and them meeting with Quinn Scott, we set and established these dates based upon Quinn Sutton, excuse me, I'm sorry, Quinn, around some of the other responsibilities that you had with other districts, if I'm not correct. I'm, don't want to impose upon you folks that are volunteering your time and wanting to get involved with this. I think that, in my opinion, that I'd like to see you folks meet and establish based upon this timeline whether you can meet it, whether you want to push it back a week, 5 days, whatever is convenient for you guys, because you've got the yeoman's work to be done on this thing, and then give us what your recommendation, and I think Tracy can communicate with us what you folks think is a reasonable timeline. We looked at this with a lot of thought to give it some a reasonable dates on it, but Quinn, I know you're going to have some input, and I know each of you other folks are going to have some input, so that's just my thoughts surrounding that.
Okay. Kirk, do you have
Mr. Waller, can I speak?
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Can I suggest something and just throw it out there for you?
Sure.
Tonight's April the 1st, and we're actually meeting when we were supposed to meet on March the 23rd. We already have 2 other dates that are established. Just a thought, and if it doesn't work for the committee, I can work around anything that the committee needs. But I was thinking, as I looked at this, that maybe if we move the April 14th meeting to where it says second screening committee meeting, and we move the April 22nd meeting to where it says the third screening committee meeting, those 2 dates have already been set. I think we can get everything we need done in between those 2 dates. That will leave the last date blank where it says joint meeting with the board and screening committee. That then we could decide, the board could decide, and the screening committee could decide together when we want to meet, that the screening committee gives those recommendations. That's just a thought, just because April 14th and April 22nd were already sent out to the committee members as dates that we would be meeting, and I think they probably already have those dates locked in. Just a thought, just whatever, but I can work with you, whatever needs to be done. You just let me know.
Again, my comments are only that, yes, we have a timeline established. We're a week behind. You have dates that are set. And I mean, all I'm saying is that what's convenient and best for you folks to do your work, and whether it means moving one meeting around for us or whatever, we can do that. I can do that.
So Quinn, you're suggesting that we just move all of these dates one block forward, pretty much.
That's just a suggestion. I mean, I looked at it yesterday, knowing that we were probably 10 days late from what we wanted to do. So that would make the decision. If we do that, again, April 14th would be when the second screening committee meets. April 22nd would be the third screening committee. And then that would leave the last meeting, the joint meeting between the board and screening committee, open for discussion, and what date that would be.
Right. Okay, Kirk, let me poll two other board members I've got down here, and then since Tracy's part of our committee anyway, we'll get her input. So, Kirk, do you have a thought on this?
Isn't April 20th our regular board meeting? So we could maybe have set a date at our regular board meeting?
20th. Well, the 22nd is when they're going to have their third meeting.
Okay, gotcha.
So we would have to be right behind that. So the 22nd is on a Wednesday. We could still have the meeting with the joint committee meeting with the board. We could still have that on April the 27th, which was already set as a board, as a meeting, if we wanted to do that. Wes, what's your thoughts on this?
I'm fine with shifting those dates around as suggested by Chief Quinn.
Just moving them forward. Okay. Ms. Tracy, since you're a board member on this decision, what are your thoughts?
Did you just say that we would be ready on the 22nd to turn over the application?
No.
Are you asking me, Ms. Tracy?
Yeah. I didn't. Maybe I misunderstood Lisa. I thought you said, Quinn, that we would meet on the 22nd for our second meeting.
Yes, on the 22nd would be your second meeting with your committee, not the board.
Oh.
And then with April the 27th, which is the following Monday, we're proposing for the joint meeting between this board and the committee. So we've moved that one forward.
Okay, I misunderstood you, Lisa. I thought you said the 22nd.
That's okay.
So then I was getting confused.
What? 22nd would be the third meeting of the committee, and then April 27th would be the meeting between the committee and the school board. Quinn, does that work with your schedule?
It works with me. I just want to make sure everybody on the committee is okay with that.
Okay. Can you all sing? Can you all sing out? What do y'all think?
That works for me.
Works for me.
It works for me.
Yep. No issues here.
Okay, so just for clarity, I want to make sure I write these down right. So the second screening committee meeting in that block, we will put April the 14th.
Correct.
The block that says third screening committee would then be April the 22nd.
Correct.
And the joint meeting would be April the 27th.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. That works great for me. And I think we'll have plenty of time to get our jobs done for that. And that will give everybody adequate time. So
okay.
That works great.
Okay, Quinn, do we as a board, because we were going to be interviewing candidates on that 27th, do we need to set a timeline to when this board is going to interview candidates, or can we push that back to later?
Yeah, I would if I were you all. That'd be totally up to y'all. If y'all, and again, those dates are not set in stone. They're just a guideline for you to try to
If I'm not
Bye.
mistaken, we originally wanted to name a superintendent by May 18th, and once we have the joint meeting on the 27th, we're going to have to decide when we're going to interview who we want to interview.
Correct.
And if whether we meet May 18th or not,
Right.
it's a whole different story.
Well, and a lot of this depending on who we decide that we want to interview, because of what's going on in these individual districts, we may need to work with those individual folks to find an interview date that works with those, because we're not just pulling somebody out of their regular schedule to come down here and interview with us. We don't know what's going on in their district as well. So, Wes, Kirk, what do you think? Leave those dates open for the interview?
I'd leave it open, since we are not for sure about the health of our communities and where these people might be coming from, and
I understand
how they,
how they feel.
I want a candidate who's healthy or feels good
I agree.
the night they interview.
I agree. So, Wes, what's your opinion on that? You're good with that? Okay. All right. Tracy, are you okay on that? We're going to leave the 27th as our joint meeting, and then what day we decide to do interviews with whatever candidates you bring to us, we will decide that date later on.
Miss Lisa, Miss. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead, Quinn. You're fine.
No, I was just going to ask: is May 18th still the goal to hire superintendent, or do you want to leave that open as well?
I think we leave that open as well.
Okay.
We got a lot of unknowns right in front of us today.
I agree 100%.
And I don't want to push hiring that superintendent and pushing it when there's just too many factors involved right now. We'll get it. We'll get a superintendent named, and we'll get it done. So it'll be fine. Okay, so I need to change those dates in my charge.
Yes, please. You would change the April 22nd on line number 2 and line number 5 to April the 27th.
Would those meeting dates be also at 5:30, or is that something we're determining later?
Well, we can determine that later, because April the 27th would definitely, I think, be for the board meeting. That's usually a 5:30 meeting from what I understood. But the April 14th and April 22nd, since it is just a screening committee, we can set, when we meet here in a few minutes by ourselves, we can determine what time you want to meet there, because it doesn't involve the entire board. It just involves Miss Tracy. So yeah, we can adjust the time on those. But I think, I'm asking the board this. The board would like April 27th at 5:30. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I think that's what we.
5:30? 5:30 or doesn't? 5:30 or 6? What do you want?
Not the 27th.
27th is not a regular board meeting. It's what? I'm sorry. Regular. Okay. Mr. Wes, the rest of us are pretty much on a free schedule. What's your schedule like? You want to do 5:30 or you want to do 6? 6 is better. We can do 6. Is that okay with you all? Okay, so we're going to do the 27th at 6 p.m.
Okay.
Okay. Quinn,
Screening committee, just remind me when we meet here in a minute that we need to talk about the time we're going to meet on the 14th and the 22nd. Don't let me forget that, okay, please?
Sure.
Okay. Quinn, the number 2 on this charge, turn over all applications to the board by April 27th?
27th.
Correct. Okay. And then the number 5, meet with the board on
April 27th.
both of those dates are the same. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
uh-huh.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
And if you want to, Miss Lisa, if you would read that charge to the screening committee.
I can do that. Okay, committee members, are y'all listening up? The Henderson County Board of Education charge to the screening committee is, number 1, maintain the confidentiality of applicants except as may be necessary to check references. Number 2, turn over all applications to the board by April 27th, 2020, with the recommendations noted. Number 3, recommend 2 to 6 candidates. Number 4, recommend applicants are to be listed in alphabetical order and not ranked. Number 5, meet with the board on April 27th, 2020 for the purpose of formally recommending and discussing the candidates. The criteria is an informative and motivational leader with strong proven leadership and a record of improving student achievement. Ad-
Right now.
Innovative.
I'm sorry,
not
what?
right now.
An innovative.
Innovative,
Like,
innovative and motivational leader
take it to the kitchen.
with strong proven leadership and a record of improving student achievement. Next, administrative experience, and be an instructional leader who is committed to college and career readiness, have effective people skills, be curriculum oriented, as well as be visible in the community. Possess strong morals and ethics, knowledge in budgeting, school finances, buildings and grounds, and strategic planning are required. Working knowledge of the Kentucky education system is desirable.
Thank you, Ms. Lisa.
You're quite welcome.
I'm going to open up for questions, but before I do, I want to say a big thank you to a couple of people. As always, Miss Robin is, as I told you in February 13th meeting, she is outstanding. She's continued to be outstanding during this process. And your board attorney, Miss Bird, she's been on top of the things, and I appreciate working with her. This has been an unusual situation. And I do appreciate their willingness to work with me and get through this process. And we're gonna get to the end goal just like we did. It's just gonna be a little different format.
It'll be a different format, but we will get through it. And Miss Beth and Miss Robin are going to continue to work with your team, and they'll work with whatever new superintendent we bring on board, and we'll be all there to bring them up to speed, so it'll not be a problem. Any board members, any other questions or comments? Nope. Mike? Miss Tracy, you got a comment?
No.
I'll make a motion and we adjourn this special meeting of the Henderson County Board of Education. Let these folks get on with their business.
Second.
A second by Kirk. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Good luck, committee, and thank you very, very much for your work. And Quinn, you have been outstanding.
Thank you. I appreciate